Hi everyone, Tina here, and today I'd like to talk about the quadratic formula. You'll need to be familiar with this idea if you're doing the Higher GCSE course. Quadratic formula is one of three ways that you can solve a quadratic equation. The other ways are by factorising or using completing the square. I've made other videos on these topics which you can have a look at. Quadratic formula is a powerful method because it works for x values no matter what they are, including if they are decimals. It looks like this: x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. A, b and c are the coefficients in the quadratic equation. Let's do a basic example first using all three methods, and then we'll do some more examples using just the quadratic formula. This example says solve x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. If we want to do that by factorising, what we do is we factorise the quadratic into two brackets equal to 0, and in this case that will be an x, and then a plus 4 and a plus 2 in either order. And then we figure out what x has to be in order for this to be true, so in order for everything to be equal to 0. And in this case, x would have to be -4 or x would have to be -2, and that's it. If we wanted to use completing the square, then we would complete the square first, so that would be x plus 3 squared minus 9 plus 8 equals 0. We would rearrange it to get x plus 3 squared equals 1. We would square root both sides to get plus or minus root 1 on that side, and then rearrange for x. Now minus 3 plus or minus root 1 is going to give us x equals -4 or x equals -2. Same answers that we got before. Now finally, let's use the quadratic formula. Now I mentioned that a, b and c are the coefficients. So in this case, we've got a, b and c. A would be 1, b would be 6, and c would be 8. Because remember, we describe a general quadratic equation by ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then all we need to do is put those values into the formula. So in this case, x equals -6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared, and I always put that b in brackets, and you'll see why later, minus 4 times 1 times 8 all over 2 times 1. Now it's just a case of typing that whole thing into your calculator. And the first time you type it, you want to use plus. And when you do that, you'll get -2 coming out. You can then go back and change that plus to a minus in the calculator. And when you do that, -4 will come out. So once again, we're getting the same two answers for the same quadratic equation. Let's look at another example. Solve 2x squared plus 13x plus 7 equals 0. Give your solutions correct to 2 decimal places. Now, in an exam, this is a massive clue that you're going to want to use the quadratic formula, because you won't get decimal answers easily by factorising or using completing the square. So in this case, a, b and c are here. So a is 2, b is 13, c is 7. We just plug those numbers into the quadratic formula carefully. The first time we type it in, we're going to use a plus, and when we do that, x ends up being -13 plus root 113 over 4. That's what comes out of the calculator initially, but because the question wants solutions correct to 2 decimal places, we need to get the decimal version of that. So that's roughly -0.59 to 2 decimal places. And once again, that's the answer you get from using the plus button. We then go back and change that plus to a minus, press equals and see what comes out. And in this case, there's a minus in the front, and then 13 plus root 113 over 4. In the calculator, you won't see those big brackets, but the minus will be in front of the fraction, so it applies to the whole fraction. And that's what happens when you use the minus button. As a decimal, that is roughly -5.91 to 2 decimal places. And those are your two answers. Last example, solve x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. Give your answers in the form a plus or minus root b. So in this case, they don't want the decimal answers, they want the exact answers, and that should come out from your calculator once you've typed it in. Let's find a, b and c. A, b, c. A is 1, b is -4, c is -1. So x equals, according to the formula, -4, be careful there, double negative, plus or minus the square root of -4 in brackets squared. This is why I always do it in brackets, because when you have a negative b value, it needs to go into brackets in order to be correct. -4 times 1 times -1 all over 2 times 1. When you type that in with the plus version, you get x equals 2 plus root 5. With the negative version, when you change that plus to a minus, you get x equals 2 minus root 5. Those are your two answers in the form required. That's it for now. If you found this video useful, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And do share this with anyone else you think might find it helpful. Thanks, and see you next time.